I would like to work with senior citizens. That's been my main focus while I've been here at Rhode Island College, but I got involved with marriage equality as part of a social action project as a junior. And as a senior, it's been my macro project. And I have been testifying and working towards changing policies that affect gay elders. We just recently, a couple weeks ago, testified before the House Judiciary Committee. And I testified on behalf of the older adults. And that was fun because by the time I got to be there, I only got a minute to speak. So it was very quick, asking our legislators to please be heroes and do the right thing. This was my first time testifying, so I had actually written out notes just because I knew there were specific things I wanted to say, because the way the state laws are written now, if you are a married couple and both of you are residents in a nursing home, you have the right to share a room together. You have the right to private time together if you're not both residing there. If you're not married, you don't get those rights. So potentially you could have a situation where a couple who's been together for 20, 30, 40 years, one of them falls ill and now the other cannot come and have any private time to have any discussions with them, or if you're both residents together, you cannot reside in the same room together and possibly not even in the same building. I mean, that's the extreme, but that could happen. So when I went to the hearings, I really wanted to specify, this is my concern. This is a huge wrong that can so easily be righted just by passing this legislation. So I originally planned to speak for 3 minutes. I was given 3 minutes. And other people, testimony went on. Some people took half an hour, 45 minutes. So by the time it was midnight, I had been there since 12 o'clock noon holding seats for people. The hearing started at 4. I didn't testify until almost 12:30. And at that point, it was the lightning round, and you had a minute. So in that 1 minute, I was able to say, here's why, and I need you to do this. And I was told that I actually did a really good job, because at that point, I was so exhausted, I didn't know what I was doing. So that just breaks my heart when people say it should be decided by a vote, because there has never been any civil rights issue. No minority issue has ever been decided by a vote. Especially we as social workers, we're learning about, who has the power in our society. And the truth is, the people who have power don't want to give up even the slightest bit of that power. So asking the majority to vote on minority rights is just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. And most civil rights issues would not have been passed if put on a ballot. I feel that it is a civil rights issue. You definitely have a minority population that is being discriminated against. This isn't. I know that the National Organization for Marriage likes to say that a lot of times that this is about destruction of the traditional family. That every child should have a mother and father, and that's not what this is about. This is about people who love each other, who want to be responsible for one another, who want to be a part of each other's lives. And I ask those people from National Organization of Marriage, what is a traditional family in America anymore? Because we have so many different situations, so many different scenarios that people are living in, that who's to say what's bad and what's right? Because we have plenty of families where there's a mother and father that's present that's not healthy. So, let the people who love each other do what's right. That always cracks me up, because when has the American society ever condoned, having multiple marriage partners? What happens outside of the marriage is a different story, but it's not, because I believe that was even something that was brought up during the civil rights issue of the interracial marriage, that people would want to marry 5-year-olds, that people would want to marry their pets, and that people would want to marry multiple people, and none of that happened. We're all sane, rational people. We're not going to be doing anything that's going to, be detrimental to anybody. We're not talking about rewriting what marriage is. I know Nam keeps saying that this is about redefining marriage. This isn't about redefining marriage. This is about expanding the language of marriage. Because on a personal level, my only interactions with them have been at like the testifying at the hearings. On a personal level, they were very friendly. When they got up and testified, they sounded hateful to me. They sounded just flat out mean. And that's another thing that I'm concerned about if this was to go to a vote, is that you now are having a minority population that's being publicly discussed. And how would you feel about it if everybody starts talking about you and your wife and what you do in your own home? All of a sudden there's ads up and you're allowing all these outside interests to come in and start discussing people's lives. It's not, it's not just people disagreeing, it's people being hateful. And some of the things that they said during the testimony was just flat out mean. And they were, and I'm not gay. And I was offended because people I love are gay. And the things they were saying broke my heart. I'm very against anything negative, and on a personal level they seem fine, but testifying their public image is just a little extreme. I don't like to say bigot. I like to say misguided. I think a lot of people say that they're homophobic, and I think we need to get away from that word homophobic and turn to what it is. It's heterosexism. Because it is, we live in a heterosexist sexual society. That's the norm. And they're coming from that heterosexist viewpoint. So I wouldn't want to call them a bigot, but I would say misguided. And that's one of the things that always, kind of sets off red flags to me, is that you are labeling. You have these labels. You have the heterosexuals on this side and you have the homosexuals on that side. And there's room for discrimination definitely there. Once you're labeling people, you potentially are forgetting that they're people. You have to be really careful with labels. A lot of people who are against these issues, they keep saying things like that the homosexual community is asking for special rights. And it's not special rights, it's equal rights. And studies have shown that these things are happening. These are facts, so just because you disagree with it doesn't mean that it's not happening. You can say, I don't believe in that all you want. The truth is, because that was the other thing that struck me during the hearings, was I almost felt like they were saying, if you don't pass this law, this won't happen then. When the reality is, these relationships exist, the bullying exists, these things are happening, and we need laws to protect people and help them through that. And almost like what they're saying is like, no. If we just don't grant this, it'll magically go away. All of it'll just disappear. Civil unions do not give you the same rights that marriage does. And I always think of marriage is so ingrained in our society. Children play at getting married. Children don't play at civil unions. Oh, I really, really want to civil union you. I'm not going to get down on bended knee and ask you to civilly union me. That's not going to happen. It's a word, but it's also about acceptance. That word marriage means that you matter. Your relationship matters. Your love matters. There's huge connotations with that word. Civil union just isn't. It just doesn't encapsulate. It doesn't say enough of what that relationship is. I really don't want it to be a religious issue. I really don't want it to be. But I worry because the church is stepping into it. I don't see this as a religious issue. This is, about people having a civil marriage. Whether or not you go to a church and have a religious ceremony is personal choice. But I just recently read, I believe it was in the Providence Phoenix, there was an article, is the Catholic Church killing marriage equality? And Representative Costa was quoted as saying that she was against marriage equality, but she was willing to vote it off the committee because she's on the House Judiciary Committee. She was willing to vote it off the committee just to get it out on the floor until Bishop Tobin called her. Because it's not every day that the bishop gives you a call. And I was alarmed by that. I was really alarmed by that because, even Kennedy, when he became president, said, I won't be taking my orders from the Pope in Rome. And yet here's a representative who's excited that the bishop is calling her, enough so that she's going to change her vote. I'm alarmed by that. I just find that alarming. And I feel like almost when they bring in the religious aspect, they're almost backing people into a corner, asking us to attack religion. And I don't want to attack religion. I don't want to, I have wonderful friends who have many different kinds of faiths, and I would never want to attack them for that. But at the same time, does that have a place in our government? And is it right to assume that one person's religion should make the decisions for all of us? He's had some letters in the paper with Martha Farrell. I don't know if you've read any of her letters.
I haven't read.
You might want to look her up. She is a Catholic in favor of marriage equality, and she wrote a beautiful letter about her faith and what she sees about this issue. And Father Healy wrote a rather scathing letter back, just saying she was misguided. And this was Martha's a person, I know her personally, but she's very strong in her faith. And it was hurtful. It was very patronizing. It was very, and a lot of people have written in Martha's defense. It's all been in the Valley Breeze, I believe their paper is, up in Cumberland. So if you get copies of them, they're terrific letters. I think one of the things he wrote to Martha was that the church is supposed to be the moral compass of our society. And I think anybody who's been aware of the news and what's been going on in the Catholic Church, I think that's rather loosely said. No, that's already written into the law that is not going to happen. But, I do kind of like to remind people that, the Mormon Church up until the 70s didn't allow African Americans into their congregations. So just because the church is against something now doesn't mean that they can't change their mind later. Nothing's written in stone. So maybe this would, but there's no law, there's nothing in that law. As a matter of fact, the law specifically states that they're protected from that. The church still has the right to not marry those that they don't want to. Because they were discriminating against same-sex couples, and they were receiving state money, government money for their thing, and that was their choice, to no longer take that state funding. And they didn't have to make that choice, but they did. So there's still freedom of religion right there. Anytime you have something open to the public, you need to really consider, well, are you going to pick and choose who that public is? Because then it becomes private. If you want to pick and choose, then it becomes private. I do believe, though, that professionals, I question a social worker who would turn away a client. Because ethically, I really question the ethics behind that. And I don't know the legality behind it. Yeah. But it's like if you're going to work, in social services, the potential of you running into somebody from the LGBT community are pretty good. So you need to be prepared for that. It's going to happen. This isn't something that isn't going to happen. I believe it is an eventuality. And I believe that more of the progressive countries in the world have already gone this way, and they have not suffered any negative consequences for this. And I would really like it if the fear would stop. Relationships throughout time have changed. I mean, you don't see things for generations, but I highly doubt cavemen were married. I don't know what their social structure was for dating. It's something that's evolved, and I would like to think of this as part of that evolution. This is just expanding. I've known several gay couples that have adopted children, and they were not accessories. They were deeply loved and very well cared for. Some heterosexual couples could take huge lessons from some of the gay couples I know. Well, the feeling I got from Nam too was that they live in this world where they would like to pretend that they don't encounter the LGBT community. You know, I don't know what world they live in, but I have known members of that community since I was a child. It's been a part of my reality since I can remember. And I'm amazed when people seem to be that blind to the realities of it. Just like when you hear somebody say that it's a choice, or, you know, when science is showing there's this huge spectrum of sexuality. It's not just are you gay or straight anymore. It's this huge spectrum. Science is finally kind of catching up and giving us the answers we need. And I think what you're seeing is people kind of fighting to the last breath what they view as that traditional America. You know, you see it throughout conservative America, where they want to roll back workers' rights in Wisconsin across the U.S. You know, if you look back to the good old days, they weren't all that good for everybody. They were really good for white men. Well, especially you just go back to the Industrial Revolution, when you had children working in mills, and, you know, the poverty rates, you know, workers had no rights. I think we're better now. I think our standard of living cannot be questioned. It's way superior to anything previously. And I don't see, and all of that's because of change. And, you know, and that's one of the things that affects me about this too, because people will be like, well, you know, you're straight, what does it have to do with you? And it's like, well, you know, it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't vote, and women before me gave up their lives so I'd have the opportunity to use my voice. And it would be a sin not to. And I think that's another thing. When people sit there and say that this is a moral issue, I kind of feel that discrimination and prejudice, those are moral issues too. But, you know, let's roll back the civil rights issues. Are you crazy? Okay, because all that happened, all that turmoil happened because change was necessary. And I think what we're seeing is people who are afraid of change. And I think change is exciting. I think it's all about possibility, and I would hate to lose sight of that.